Hostin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Damn!
Greg Gutfeld recently unleashed his razor-sharp wit on Sunny Hostin's latest controversy, and it was nothing short of epic. For years, Sunny has been known for her outspoken commentary on race, identity, and systemic oppression. But recently, she found herself at the center of a jaw-dropping controversy that has the internet buzzing.
Yeah.
Imagine this. You think you know your family's history, right? You're proud of it. But what if that history is completely different from what you expected? And what if the past you've been so vocal about turned out to have a dark twist? Stay tuned, because what happens next will make you rethink everything you knew about Sunny Hostin, and her reaction to the truth will leave you speechless. But before we get started, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. We really appreciate it. It all started on PBS's Finding Your Roots. This is a show where celebrities learn the true origins of their family trees. And when Sunny Hostin appeared on the show, she thought she was simply going to discover more about her Puerto Rican heritage. After all, she's proudly identified as being half Puerto Rican for most of her life. But this revelation was anything but ordinary.
I'm a little bit in shock. I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican.
Sunny was stunned to learn that her family wasn't just linked to Puerto Rico, they had deep roots in Spain, and shockingly were involved in slavery. Her third great-grandfather, it turns out, was a slaveholder. That's right, one of her ancestors owned slaves, and when Sunny heard this, you could see the shock on her face. She was speechless, almost frozen in disbelief.
Didn't think I was, my family was originally from Spain and slaveholders.
For a woman who has spent her career decrying racism and systemic oppression, the news was a gut punch. In a moment of raw emotion, Sunny said, "I just always thought of myself as Puerto Rican. I didn't think my family was originally from Spain, and slaveholders..." Yeah, let that sink in for a second. For Sunny, this wasn't just a family secret. It was a bombshell that challenged everything she'd ever believed about her ancestry. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Sunny didn't exactly seem torn up about it. Instead of grappling with the weight of this history, she responded with a somewhat dismissive attitude. She called it a fact of life, something her ancestors did back then.
I think it's actually pretty interesting.
Now that's where the drama really starts. Enter Greg Gutfeld, Fox News' outspoken host and comedian. The moment this news broke, Gutfeld didn't waste a second. If anything, he saw an opportunity for a little fun and, well, a lot of pointed critique. On his show, Gutfeld wasted no time calling out Sunny's hypocrisy.
Fact of life. Interesting change of tune.
Let's be real here. For years, Sunny has been one of the loudest voices on The View when it comes to race and identity politics. She's always ready to call out America's racist history and point fingers at systemic oppression. But now that she's learned her own family's dark connection to slavery, Gutfeld had something to say about it. He hit the nail on the head with this. So now that you know your family's history, are you going to reconsider your constant lectures about systemic racism and oppression? Gutfeld's words were like a slap in the face to the narrative Sunny had built over the years. She'd been the loudest critic of America's racist past, but now her own family was a direct link to it. Gutfeld didn't stop there. He made sure to highlight how awkward this would be for Sunny on future episodes of The View. Can you imagine her trying to lecture America about systemic racism, only to have her co-hosts look at her and say, "Wait a minute, weren't your ancestors slave owners?" Gutfeld knew that this would put Sunny in an uncomfortable position where her whole narrative would be questioned. And in classic Gutfeld style, he threw in some humor. He joked about how Sunny's shocking family history might make for some pretty awkward moments on set with Whoopi Goldberg. He added, "Maybe now we know why she always makes Whoopi get the coffee." It was a funny jab, but underneath was also an insightful commentary on how the hypocrisy of identity politics can lead to contradictions you can't ignore. Now, let's break this down for a second. Sunny Hostin has made a career out of criticizing America's history of racism and slavery. She's been an outspoken advocate for racial justice and often brings up America's past sins in her discussions. But now that she's personally connected to that same history, she takes a completely different approach. Her response was almost nonchalant. "That's just what they did back then, huh?" Now, that's where things get really interesting. You see, Sunny didn't take a moment to reflect on how her own narrative was now in conflict with her family's past. She didn't express express any discomfort with the fact that her ancestors were directly involved in the oppression of others. Instead, it was just an "it is what it is" attitude. She didn't even try to reconcile her own history with the positions she's taken in the past. There was no acknowledgement of the contradiction, and that's what really bothered people. Gutfeld's critique here was spot on. He pointed out how Sunny often uses her identity as a weapon to call out others, accusing them of benefiting from a system built on oppression. But now, when faced with her own hypocrisy, she brushes it off like it's nothing. It's the kind of double standard that a lot of people just can't ignore. Gutfeld raised an important question. Will Sunny continue to shame others for their ancestral connections to racism when she's now in the same boat? Will she still lecture the world about America's past, or will she acknowledge the uncomfortable truth about her own family's history? The funny thing is, while Gutfeld's critique was biting, it was also full of humor. He was poking fun at Sunny's obliviousness and the awkwardness of the situation, but in doing so, he also laid bare the contradictions in her worldview. Sunny's defensive response only made things worse. Instead of taking responsibility or showing any humility, she got defensive and dismissed the entire thing. This wasn't just about an individual's hypocrisy, it was a commentary on how identity politics often gloss over personal accountability. When the tables were turned and the history of her own family came into play, Sunny couldn't handle it. Now, when something this dramatic happens, you know the internet is going to explode. And explode it did. Clips of Gutfeld's takedown went viral within hours. People couldn't get enough of how he pointed out Sunny's hypocrisy in such a sharp, hilarious way. Fans of Gutfeld praised him for saying what they were all thinking, that Sunny had been exposed. One social media user wrote, "Sunny Hostin learning her ancestors were slaveholders is the plot twist we didn't see coming." But Greg Gutfeld's reaction? Absolute gold. It was clear that viewers appreciated Gutfeld's honesty, and they were quick to call out Sunny's lack of accountability. But of course, Sunny's defenders came to her rescue, arguing that she was simply processing new information. They claimed she wasn't dismissing the revelation, but just struggling to come to terms with it. But for many, that dismissive, "it was just what they did back then" response was not enough. It felt tone deaf and lacked any real introspection. Now, beyond the drama and the viral moment, there's a much larger conversation happening here. Gutfeld's critique wasn't just about Sunny, it was a commentary on the contradictions within identity politics. He pointed out how some people weaponize their identities and use them as a tool to call out others, all while ignoring their own complicity in the systems they criticize. This clash was a reminder that none of us are free from history's complexities. Everyone has a past, and sometimes that past doesn't line up with the narratives we like to tell ourselves. For Sunny Hostin, this was a moment to reflect on her own family's ties to slavery and how that shaped her perspective. But instead of confronting the truth, she deflected and dismissed. So, what do you think? Was Gutfeld right to call out Sunny for her hypocrisy? Should she have taken a step back and acknowledged the irony of her situation? Or do you think she handled the revelation as best as she could? Let us know in the comments below, and while you're at it, hit that like button and subscribe for more bold takes, fiery debates, and viral moments. You don't want to miss the next big story because, trust me, it's coming soon.